Hi everyone! So I want to make a video talking about the season theme and how you can use it for your own pushes, especially in solo that plays quite a big role. And well, a few weeks ago I've cleared my own tier 150 solo DH Greater Rift. You might have seen that one, and it was in good part thanks to the seasonal theme. So you don't really notice much of it when you're speed farming, just rank rushing for rifts and so on. But in these slower paced runs where you can kind of, make these pulls, prepare it, and then, have the season theme actually do some work for you, it does matter quite a lot. So depending on the build, depending on, which procs exactly you're getting and how lucky you are and the situations and so on, I believe that the seasonal theme overall is a buff of somewhere between 6 to 12 tiers. And well, you should play around it if you want to be most effective. In my case, I also killed the Rift Guardian with the season theme and not with the Bane Stricken, because that would take like over 8 minutes. Yeah, it's just quite a struggle when it goes to high tiers, I guess. So here I want to help you out a little bit and maybe show you some of the examples that I have gathered and how I play around in these situations. I also have a written guide of this that you can check out, and yeah, maybe it will help you a little bit. In general, what you need to know about the seasonal theme before we start talking about the individual procs is that you have 9 of them in total in a run. They happen once every 90 seconds, so you get the last proc at 30 minutes 30 into a run, which is the 9th proc. And you can delay that by dying and by pressing revive at corpse, because if you stack up the death penalty timer, your seasonal theme timer will actually not advance. So if you die too often, especially once you reach like a 20-second, 25-second timer or so, you might actually kind of like push out one of your seasonal themes by pressing on the revive at corpse button. So you should really try to avoid this, because else you're just gonna reduce your total amount of seasonal themes from 9 to 8. You don't really want this, and it's just gonna make your life harder. So keep in mind, it could be worth to just stay on the ground and or revive a checkpoint in some cases to make sure that you don't advance your Greater Rift timer too much. Otherwise, you can't really affect when it's gonna proc. It's always 90 seconds. Just have to make sure you're alive when it happens, because if you're dead or if you die exactly right after, then it will cancel it or it might not spawn at all. And you also can't really influence what you're getting. You can only try to prepare for certain things. In most cases, that means you want to make a huge pull to get stacks, and then you kind of want to slowly move the pull into like a corner where you can get like nice twisters or like a nice fire wave and so on. You want to kind of stack it up. It's not always possible depending on the monster type, depending on the situation, but this is typically the overall idea. And the amount of stacks you're aiming for, that also depends on the monster types, but typically you want to be somewhere between like 50 and 100. It can be a little bit less in some cases, it can be a little more in some cases. But those monster types where you get less than 50 stacks, something like Disentombed Hulks with Dust Eaters, even Lakuni Slashers plus Horrors and so on. There are some monster types with really tanky trash, and it's extremely hard to get any kind of stacks. And those monster types typically work really badly in this season, just because of how this mechanic works. It really benefits you from killing the small stuff, and there are some monster types that actually have rather juicy small trash. So you can get something like the Summoner combos, you can get like Zombie Grotesques, you can get Lakuni Face Beasts and so on. Wild Swarms especially, you can get like insane progression while getting a lot of stacks, and those are typically the monster types that work really well right now. And some of the traditionally good monster types are just not that great right now. So let's get started here with the beam. I think this is overall the best proc in the game, because it gives you the most control, and once you reach like a certain minimum threshold of like 100 plus stacks or so, it can obliterate basically any trash bag, and in some cases even start killing blue elites, and then after like 150 plus stacks or so, you can even start attempting killing yellows. So it's quite good, and here we actually do get to 150 stacks, so it's a rather strong beam. And you can see we have like a full HP blue pack here, and it's even like spread out a little bit. It's like a medium-sized blue pack, on the lower end with the HP, because there's actually summoners. They're not really that tanky, but you can see how they're melting. And even with myself not being able to beam through the entire pull all the time, I managed to kill almost all of them, and the last guy survives with 2%. So unlucky in this case, but I think I finished him later anyway after a while of kiting. And this is how you can use a beam here in these cases. When you have like a really strong one, just aim for the pack. You have to position yourself properly. So I can show that again. It's very important that you position yourself on the far end of the pull, go straight for the middle, make sure you get like most of the trash. Typically you want to prioritize trash first, unless you really have to get an elite kill, otherwise the run fails or so. But typically make sure you don't over commit to an elite pack. In this case, for me it was fine to try it here because I had so many stacks, because I had this pack that was rather low HP, and well, it almost worked out perfectly. I was like missing this one tech, and eventually I got a blue kill anyway because it was at like 2%. So this is pretty nice, and this is how you can use it. Here's another example of the beam with a little bit smaller pull, smaller stacks as well. We have 70 stacks, and we're in a pretty bad map here, so we just have to use what we can basically. And here we find these 4 maggots, so they will spawn a lot of these little maggots, and we can try to finish them off. So this is like the only real option we have here, and I basically fully commit to killing those maggot brutes, and it just barely works out. You can see a 70 stack beam, and this is like one of the tankiest trash around basically, and it still kind of works. So if you commit properly, if you manage to hit them all the time with the beam, you can actually do a lot of work even with a rather small beam. And even like a 40 stack beam or so, can kill like medium-sized stuff if you just go straight for it. Here's a little bit of a more advanced use of the beam. So I use it in 2 different spots. We have an 80 stack beam, and we have only like rather small trash with those spiders. And here I realize, I have only like those 4 guys left there or so. So let's just go back to the other pull that I just left behind. And this was what I prepared earlier, what I got my initial stacks off and so on. This is actually the first season theme proc of the run. And like this, you can also squeeze out a little bit more if you use that effectively. I would not recommend going ahead with such a strategy. When you try to do 2 locations, you should only go to somewhere where you already know what's there and you have it kind of grouped anyway. So typically this is some of the trash that you left behind by running ahead to actually do something with the season theme. And if you remember where it is and how far and how many enemies, you can decide like in the moment that okay, with the beam you can run back and get more stacks as well. So here's an example of snowballs. So what we have here is we are in a festing woods. It's a kind of like an open space, and I have a bunch of blue packs here and so on. I have 90 stacks season theme coming up, so quite good. Right now I'm trying to make a pull and kind of move it down here to the corner. I also try to push my follower down to the corner, so I teleported him here to the side to kind of make everything walk a little bit down. Preferably it would be down here because that would be a nice spot for twisters, and also like you can bounce around everything, you can get like any season theme there. But it's not really that easy because we're running out of time here. So basically just trying to move everything a little down, and here we notice it's a snowball. So I was thinking about still balancing it in this corner here, but what I actually saw here is that you have this little island where you can bounce off the snowball. So basically I was trying to bounce it up here once through the entire pole, and then let it come back once or maybe twice. It might bounce out again, and I thought that this might help me the most here right now, because there is actually a really decent risk of these corners here. It's a very uneven wall layout. It can bounce like in any direction. It's quite unpredictable in something like a festing woods, because these are not like straight walls. These are like curved, and they have like little bulges and whatever, and this doesn't work so well. So in that case, just send it straight through. Another option would be also just send it straight up, because this would be the direction I have to go to. So just send it up here in one path. But I already pulled most of the stuff down. So, if this was like unexplored, that might be a good idea, because you can rush with the snowball, pull stuff in, that also works. But here I was going for the elite kills, and this looks like this. So the snowball is coming up and actually perfectly bounces back from the little island here, down here. And I just try to stay in the path and keep the elites in the path. And this is really what you want to do with a 96 snowball. It's like the perfect scenario where you just need like a few ticks to actually finish some of these elites here. And you can see it's going really well. They are dying, the trash is dying. I'm already back to over 50 stacks just on the snowball. And here we get the 2 kills at the end. 2 packs actually died in the last moment there. I was a little bit lucky. It could have gone much worse, but this is like one of these situations where a snowball actually did a lot of work. I've had much bigger ones. I had like a 30% snowball at some point that killed 4 of the others. So you can get some crazy stuff, and sometimes it might bounce off by mistake and you don't get anything, but this is how it goes. Here's one of these examples where I try to kill a Rift Guardian with a snowball. So here you can see I have 102 stacks, which is more than fine to kill a Rift Guardian if you get the full snowball on it. And well, on a map like this, it's actually quite easy to do because we have these little bridges. So this is almost a perfect scenario here where it's very easy to bounce it back and forth between those two walls here, because it's, you know, a rather long bridge, and even if the angle is slightly off, you know, the snowball might bounce, like, you know, slowly in one direction. But as long as you do it kind of right, you have, you know, like a very long path for the snowball to kite through. So this is what I did here, and this was actually like one of my really close attempts where I got a little bit unlucky by what happened next with the boss here, which is, you know, he teleported not on me, but actually he was too fat for the bridge. So he teleported down here, and I lost, you know, like almost 10 seconds of the snowball or so. So unfortunate, but this is how it goes. Typically, I also use the Festering Woods exits, like these little doors. You can also perfectly bounce a snowball in these cases. And this is how you'd have to kill a Rift Guardian if you'd like to try this. You can also use this for elites, you can use this for trash, you know, just when you see you get a snowball and you're on this map anyway, you know, just bounce it back and forth, and you can like let stuff walk in over time and just get obliterated. So this is how that goes. Just how wrong this can go, I can show here a little bit. So this is one of my earlier attempts, I guess, where I tried to kill the boss with a snowball, but I had rather low stacks, so it was unlikely he would die anyway. But if you're not careful, you can, you know, mess it up really badly. I'm not really sure what happened here, because typically you can stay in this exit on Festering Woods and you're fine, but here just like bounce out straight in 90 degrees, and at that point this is over, you know. Typically the snowball is supposed to get stuck there and kill a boss, you know, but unlucky. Yeah, it just happens, and I also had a lot of snowballs on my bosses that, you know, just went wrong like this, and yeah, something to be aware about at least if you're trying for this. So next up we have the Twisters. The Twisters are generally a pretty good proc, but only if they are released in a pretty good spot. So it's a little bit unlucky sometimes because they don't always spawn exactly on you. Sometimes they spawn like half a screen away even, and then they fly off in all different directions. So if you want to go for Twisters, you have to make sure that you put a pull into like a rather kind of okay corner at least. You know, it's not always possible, you know, something like a Battlefields map here. It's like a really broad area. It goes off in like all directions and so on, and it's really hard to do. And you see this here, for example, I got a Twister. I had a really nice amount of stacks. So I had 130 stacks. 130 Twisters is no joke, and you can usually like obliterate the entire pool. But killing elites is extremely hard. This is actually one of my only elite kills I've ever done from 100 to 0 with Twisters, and I just got lucky. But generally, you can clean up big trash bags quite easily, especially if you manage to get a pull a little bit into a corner. You can do a lot of work with this. And here you see I'm focusing on this one Twister here. This is basically my friend now, and I'm kiting stuff through this one Twister for the most part. So this is what we're focusing on. You know, we have all the elites following me, and they see like this other Twister also coming back and so on, and they combine here. And I actually managed to get the blue kill in this corner here where the Twister goes through. So this was really nice. And, you know, with the bigger sized Twisters, you can definitely do a lot of work here. Here's one of those Twister situations where we can't really do much, and it's kind of like out in the open, really big area. So if you get Twisters, it's kind of scuffed here because you can't control them. But I got them, and I tried it anyway. So I just stayed on top of the elites, and I tried to kite what I can through it. And then, you know, you again pick like one Twister or so that you can stick to. Typically, you want to try to go ahead through the rift, you know, where there's like more enemies that you can find. And, you know, depending on how strong the Twisters are, even a single one can do quite a lot of work if you are not super unlucky. So here we actually got a few elite kills because of that. And, but it was also because they were already quite low HP. You know, all these elites were like 30% or so. But yeah, it can help. And what you can do is in these big open areas is to just go into the middle of the pool to try to make the Twister spawn around you. And like this, you can get at least like, you know, like a 1 second or so of all 5 Twisters doing some damage on everything before they, you know, fly off in all directions. So that's like, you know, where you would get the most out of them. So here I want to show you an example of some Meteors. Meteors are generally fine because you don't really have to do much about it, because as long as the pull is big enough, not really much can go wrong, because, you know, any Meteor is going to hit something, and they can do quite a lot of work. Here we only have 38 stacks on Meteor, rather tanky trash. And you can see for yourself how much progression we're getting. We are basically at 0 when it started, and we're getting like really big impacts here. In the middle, we get 60 stacks. We got like, I don't know, over 5% progression just from those Meteors. And there's still so much left in this pull. I mean, this was a rather big pull here. This was like easy 15% or so. But we did get quite a good bunch out of it. and even with very weak meteors. But you know, it can also be that, especially when you have very few targets, they're just gonna go down and hit nothing. So typically you want to make sure that you have these large pulls when you're getting the meteors. So try to not kill off, you know, some elites or so with some big meteors, even if you have like, you know, 150 stacks or so. If they don't hit, you get nothing out of it and you're standing there with 0 stacks. Always prioritize the trash in that case. Here are some meteors with a very high stack count, 165. So this is another boss spawn in time for me, and I try to kill this one. But well, if you get meteors, the boss kill is basically impossible. Maybe if you have like 250 plus stacks or 300 somehow, and you get like, you know, super lucky impacts, like 5 or 6 at least, I don't know. But even that is probably not enough. So it's extremely unlikely. And you can see that, you know, when you have these like very few targets, you might not even get a single hit. And this is exactly what happened here. So never try to kill elites, you know, specifically with the meteors. Always, you know, do it on the big pull, because it's just, you know, so spread out. It's way too unlikely, too unreliable. So here I can show you one of these examples with a lot of stacks for the meteors. We have over 200 right now, because I have an illusionist red collar pack here, which is like, you know, totally ridiculous to get insane amount of stacks. I even went over like 300 at some points with those packs, and I found them a few times, like a handful of times or so. Illusionist red collars, very good, because they spawn infinite amount of rats and give you many stacks. And here you can see some really big meteors now, and they can be quite devastating in those cases. You know, on this pull we have like a yellow in there, we have some nice trash, and basically just trying to get most out of it. And you can see like, you know, 2 meteor impacts already put the yellow to, or like 3 impacts put it to like 30% or so. So, you know, even like just one more meteor will almost kill it. So in this case, very nice, but you know, as I said, you can't rely on it. It's just like a bonus when you actually kill an elite, or you just get them low and then maybe finish them off later. So don't go for it, just go for the big packs. And to show you how to use the fire wave properly, it's not really a big pull I make here, but you can kind of see the idea behind it. I have a really big fire wave here, and we have very high HP trash. So especially on those trash that can follow you around, that is not like a range or something, you have to try to kite it through the wave with you. So typically you want to teleport away your follower, but you don't have to do this always. But right now the follower is quite far up there, and he's actually, you know, keeping these enemies busy, and they're not really running through the wave, but I'm running with the wave. So I kite stuff from both sides through the wave and try to keep them, you know, inside of the wave like this. And usually I would maybe go from this situation to teleport away my follower a bit. So here the wave spawned, and you see now I could have gone like a bit further down here to actually teleport my Templar down, and then I could have, you know, kited all of this stuff into the wave and then move me up again. Basically, that's how I want to do it, to keep stuff in the wave as long as possible, and then it can actually have quite a good effect, even with like, you know, 100 stacks or so. Here's also one of these examples where the fire wave just doesn't spawn. You have a really big one, 140 stacks almost. Pretty bad map here with this cave, and you know, not really a big opportunity to make a pull. But you can see I'm quite close to spawning. I basically just need like, you know, one other good proc here, and then I would be able to spawn the boss, and we didn't get anything. So this happens very often. It's very hard to say when that happens or why that happens. There might be a little bit of a pattern where standing still, you know, or not really moving around very much, or not strafing very much right before might help you a little bit. But I honestly couldn't really confirm this. So yeah, here it ruined the run, because this was the last proc before the one that would kill the boss. And I would have no chance to get like this remaining almost 10% or so, and getting enough stacks, and getting in a position to spawn the boss and so on. So unfortunate, but it's just something to be aware of. The fire wave, yeah, try to stand still, try to position yourself properly once you see that it's the wave, and it might help a little bit, but I can't confirm. Here I want to show you a fire wave that has gone wrong because of wallers. Wallers are something you have to be really careful about, and they can ruin those firewalls. You know, even if you get lucky and it spawns and it has enough stacks and so on. Here we are close to 100 stacks, so it's pretty nice for this kind of trash. You know, everything's already a bit low. You can get a lot of progression even from the fire wave. But here, like I started it, and then it hit the wall there right away. So I didn't get out of there in time, and my potion was on cooldown. I wasn't able to break the walls. As soon as this thing touches the wall, it's gonna stand still for like a second and then disappear. So you really have to avoid this. And you can see I basically ruined the run like this, because you know, I really had to finish off this trash here. It's very tanky. I can't do it myself very easily, and I'm already far behind. So I kind of needed things to go in my favor, and they clearly didn't. So I could have done this better in this case. It was unfortunate, and just something to be really careful about. When you have waters, release the fire waves from a side where you haven't been standing before, and then fuck off immediately as well, because else, you know, it might disappear immediately from water. Yeah, and that's it for this guide. I hope you enjoyed this and you learned something. Maybe it will help you out a little bit, and just, you know, give you like some examples basically. You know, it's really hard to cover like everything in every situation, but just kind of like, you know, raising the awareness of what you can do, of kind of what works in what situation, and the rest, I guess, you can also, you know, kind of figure out from your own pushes and from watching this. So I hope you liked this video. I'll see you guys next time.